When I was a kid, my dad took us up to see our great uncle Walt. And while he was hanging out with our great uncle Walt, we went down to his tobacco barn. And inside the tobacco barn was a crate. And we opened the crate, and inside the crate, I pulled out his jacket, and it was his World War I trench coat. It was Uncle Walt's trench coat. It's full of moth holes. And as I about got it all the way out of the box, I disrupted a yellow jacket's nest and started getting stung and had to run out of the barn screaming. And as we were driving home that afternoon, the long drive through the winding mountains home, I asked Dad, what was great Uncle Walt's World War I experience like? Like, what happened to him over there? And he said, well, the story goes they were in a trench, and they said, when we blow the whistle, you're going to charge and take the Germans' trench. And they blew the whistle, and he said he charged into the next trench, and something hit him in the head. He thought he had gotten shot, knocked him out. And when he came to, he had his gas mask on, sitting there in the trench, and a lot of his buddies were down there around him dead, and he didn't remember anything that had happened. And he looked at his helmet for the bullet hole and realized that what he had probably done is running so fast into the next trench, he had knocked himself out in the darkened night, just hitting the wall of the other trench. And his buddies put the gas mask on him in case they got gassed. Well, that was a good story, and I like to hear it. And I thought that was good, but I was thinking there's got to be more to the story. And years went by, and I started doing some research. And I decided there may be a better way to end that story. You see, right before the yellow jacket started stinging me, I noticed that jacket was sitting on a crate inside the box. Just caught a glimpse of it, but it was a red box. And you see, the name of this story is called The Red Box. I hope you enjoy it. You see, I work at a grocery store, and we had a guy come in and work for us one time, and we ended up nicknaming him Boom Nate. Great kid. A lot of fun to work with. And you see, Boom Nate had a Swiss accent. And Boom Nate was American. What had happened was he hit his head in a climbing accident. And when he came to, he didn't remember anything. And since he was with his dad in Switzerland, he started learning Swiss and had a Swiss accent. And I got to thinking, what if my great uncle Walt was over there fighting in this war, and he hit his head just like Boom Nate climbing, and when he came to, he didn't remember anything. He didn't remember what happened. And you see, I did a little research, and I think I figured out what may have happened. You see, in World War I, the Americans, nicknamed the Doughboys, were going to fight the Germans. The Marine Expeditionary Force was one of the groups. And there was a guy from Georgia who wrote his general a letter asking if they could take shotguns. Specifically, if he could modify a shotgun for the trench. And the general wrote back supposedly saying, yes, by all means, modify away. So, with this privilege, and they modified the first ever pump trench shotgun. And you see, this would be a devastating weapon in a trench. And there's records, supposedly, of the Germans complaining about the gun officially to the Geneva Convention. And it was soon after this complaint was filed that the war ended. And after the war, it was ironically the same thing happened. What also ended was the women's ability to not vote. Women were all of a sudden able to vote after World War I, which has something to do with this story. You see, my great uncle Walt was a tobacco farmer, and as a kid, I noticed that up there in those mountains, there's a lot of wild turkeys. And as a tobacco farmer, you don't want to have wild turkeys in your tobacco, pooping in it and messing it up. You see, Uncle Walt had to get rid of those turkeys. But you see, the wild turkeys have the best vision you could ever ask for, and they see you coming before you're even close. So you have to be able to shoot them really far away, and Uncle Walt, experiencing this, started manufacturing his own shotgun rounds to try to reach out and touch the wild turkeys, to keep them out of his tobacco. And one night, you see, up there in the mountains, they also would maybe make moonshine. And it would just so happen to be, it was one night he was pressing out these new rounds to try to reach out and touch the wild turkeys. And Uncle Walt was drinking some moonshine, and it was a bad batch of moonshine. He'd had a couple shots of it and decided it wasn't any good. It may have gone sour, and he put it down, but it spilled. And it spilled in his gunpowder that he was making his shotgun rounds with. But he didn't really recognize it. He knew a little got in there, or, a lot had gotten in there, but he didn't want to waste the powder, so he laid it out to dry and was like, well, this could go bad or this could go good. We'll see what happens. And he made some of these turkey rounds with now the moonshine powder. And he was out on the farm one day, he was hunting, and came up on a group of wild turkeys. He pulled up one of his new moonshine rounds, hot loads, and he shot, and the gun exploded. A fireball shot out the end of it, 70 feet. Knocked him on his feet. As he came to, he got back up. He looked where the wild turkeys were, and he saw they were all dead. Just stubs of where they were standing. The turkeys themselves feathers were gone. The meat of the turkey was just sitting there, but it looked like they had been just cooked in the oven for Thanksgiving. They were all just scorched, been fried by this shotgun round that blew his gun up. He was like, oh my God, this isn't good. So anyway, great Uncle Walt, with this new shotgun round, knew that with World War I coming up, and he had just gotten his papers, he's got to go serve. He thought about that round and how it could help him versus the Germans, though. So he came up with a plan. You see, he had a lot of that sour moonshine, and he had a lot of gunpowder. So what he decided to do was to make as many of these shotgun rounds as he could. And he knew that the weather in Europe would ruin the rounds, so he After he made multiple crates of this shotgun round, he covered them in wax, red wax. But he gave the crates a very distinct emblem, a fireball coming out of a bomb, before he covered them in wax because they were very delicate and explosive. But you see, he had a problem. How is he going to get these highly illegal exploding shotgun rounds to Europe? Well, he got deployed to Georgia to train with the Marine Expeditionary Force, and it would just so happen his path would cross, let's just call him Eugene. And Eugene had made this modified trench shotgun. And he got to talking to Uncle Walt, and Uncle Walt was like, hey, I got a secret about shotguns. I got a problem. And he explained to Eugene the problem, and he was like, this could help us versus the Germans. These rounds, but we don't want to blow our guns up. And they experimented with one of the rounds. And Eugene was convinced that this possibly could help in a last stand scenario. So, but the problem was the gun was going to blow up, and they needed the gun to be a little bit more overbuilt so it could hold up to this new round. Well, it just so happened that Eugene was in contact with the godfather of firearms, Mr. John Moses Browning. You see, Browning had heard about this trench shotgun being made, and he had something that he wanted to add. He wanted to help. So he took a train from Utah to Georgia, and he brought something with him. You see, Eugene had explained to Mr. Browning that they had a problem with the shotgun. It needed to be a little more robust, and it needed to be a little more, just a little heavier and able to handle the exploding round, in addition to all the other features. So on that train ride from Utah, there were multiple cars. And in his shop in Utah, he made special barrels, special receivers for this new Winchester pump shotgun. And on the bottom of that receiver, he marked the letter E for Eugene, so they would know secretly which guns could handle the big rounds. But you see, Eugene knew that he had pushed his luck asking to modify the shotgun, and to knowingly ask to bring a round that could possibly blow the gun up, he knew he wouldn't get permission. So they had to figure out another way to get the rounds to Europe. Well, to get the rounds to Europe, you would have to find a boat captain. You would have to find a ship that could get them there. And you see, Uncle Walt knew a captain that sailed out of Savannah. That's where his tobacco was taken. And you see, Uncle Walt, the captain loved Uncle Walt's tobacco. And so Uncle Walt asked the captain, was like, hey, could you help possibly get us these boxes over to Europe? And you see, the captain sailed to Europe all the time with the tobacco. The captain was like, absolutely, well, I'll take your red boxes to Europe, to France, because that's where the tobacco goes. And that just so happened to be where the Americans were going to be fighting the Germans. And they had come up with a plan. Well, once you get to Europe, you can write me at this address because I'll be over there. The captain was friends with all the people at the restaurants and knew a lot of folks enjoyed the fine dining over there in the Riviera. And so they had a plan. The doughboys sailed across the pond and they got to Europe and they were fighting in all their battles and the shotgun was doing great, but they got to the Battle of Belleau Wood. And this is where the Germans and the Americans officially met. And you see, the Battle of Belleau Wood was bad. The boys had fought up to that point. They had lost a lot of good guys, and they knew that this was probably going to be it. And Walt and Eugene knew that this is probably it. We're not getting out of this one. So Walt wrote the captain and was like, hey, we're probably not going to see you again. We're at the Battle of Belleau Wood. We're just north of you in France, and we're at this location, and we could use the red boxes because this is probably our last stand. And just thinking, hopefully the boxes will make it. And so, a couple nights into it, they knew this is it. We're going in. We're going to have to. They're going to blow the whistle soon, and we got to take the trench. And Uncle Walt was just like, man, you know, he caught a whiff of something. He smelled his tobacco. And you see, his tobacco was some of the best. And it was only sold to the finest cigarette makers, and he started smelling more of the tobacco and more of the tobacco in the trench, and he was like, oh my God, where's my tobacco smell coming from? And he poked his head up and he looked back and he could see just a train of cigarettes lit. It's like, what is that? And the train got closer and closer to him, and Uncle Walt got called in by his officer and said, there's somebody here to see you. He went over and there was the captain. And the captain didn't come alone. You see, their boys were stretched thin already on the line, and you see, the captain was friends with a lot of people in France, and there was more to the story, and the captain had other friends also in Georgia. And what Walt didn't realize is the captain, when Browning had come over with the train to Georgia, he had more on that train than just pump shotgun parts for Walt and Eugene. And he also needed somebody that he could give something to get to Europe. You see, at the same time, Mr. Browning had invented the auto shotgun. And he had his own crates of trench semi-auto shotguns that he wanted to get into the hands of the French. So when they fought on their own land, they had the best gun that they could get. And you see, the captain had given out hundreds of these auto-loading shotguns and had promised them, this is what's going to win the war. And all those Frenchmen showed up, the restaurateurs, and they called themselves the Resistance. And they all had Browning's new auto-loader shotgun fully loaded. And you see, they knew this is probably going to be it, the last stand. And so the captain passed Walt and Eugene his red box. And Walt stripped the wax off very carefully, opened the box, and passed his rounds out to everybody in the line. And said, boys, when it gets down to the last one, this is the one you want to use when you think it's it. And you see that night when the Germans and the Americans met and the Americans got down to their last bullet, they used Uncle Walt's hot round, the moonshine round. And it shot the fireball 70 feet. The Germans' clothes scorched off. They were left standing there with their boots, their skin fried. They didn't know what had just happened to them. Fireballs shooting out everywhere. They turned and burned. They wanted nothing to do with whatever was coming out of that barrel. They didn't know what had just happened to them. And they officially complained to the Geneva Convention about this new American shotgun. But you see, what they didn't realize is it wasn't just the Trent shotgun. It was the new auto loader with Uncle Walt's hot loads, the moonshine round. And you see, as Uncle Walt fought that night, he did knock himself out running into the next trench. And when he came to, you see, he had forgotten about what had happened. He forgot about the red box. And you see, the captain put the mask on him so he would live when the Germans gassed him. And the captain went back to France, back to Paris with the resistance after winning the Battle of Belleau. But you see, the captain had a secret. The captain was a woman. And this was the first time a woman had fought in combat directly next to the American men, the American woman, and she had saved them with the hot rounds and the autoloader shotguns. And it was after this achievement that could not be spoken of because it was classified and illegal that after the war women were given the right to vote. And you see, my Uncle Walt, when my dad went to visit him, it was the captain that was with him. And that's why he wanted to go up there and see him. So bad. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. It's the Red Box.